March of 1942, Mr. Speranza reached the age of 18. In January, he went to the enlistment agency in New York City, where he asked to be put at the top of the draft list. This would ensure his enlistment into the service at the age of 18. He was then sent to Fort Benning, Georgia, to appear at the Army Center.
When you appear at the Army Center, they give you a battery of tests, and then they ask you which branch of the service you'd like to join. Army, Air Force, or Marines, the Navy. And I said, Air Force. I'd like to, everybody wants to be a pilot. And they looked at my medical record, and they said, your eyesight, and you can't go into the Air Force. So they said, well, let's go over the battery of tests. Told me all the things that I was, at home you get all kinds of advice from everybody that says, don't go into the infantry.
His advanced infantry training took place at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where he was placed in the 87th Infantry, otherwise known as the Airborne Division.
And one morning, they ordered us all out and marched us to a big field. And they said, everybody sit down, there's going to be a demonstration. And the demonstration was, out of the sky, 3 C-47s came roaring over the field, and all of a sudden, out of the doors, came paratroopers. Wow. And we watched as these men jumped out of those airplanes and came down on the ground and wrapped up their parachutes and took it over his place and ran off the field and came running up to where we were, and then all stood at attention while their officer addressed us. He said, we're forming a new unit of parachute troops, and we want volunteers. You have to have had your complete infantry training, because after all, this is parachute infantry. You have to be a paratrooper. And they sent us back to Fort Benning, Georgia, this time for parachute training. Everything you did in the infantry, we used to do 30-mile hikes with full field pack. In the paratroops, you do 50-mile hikes. In the infantry, you walk every place. In the paratroops, you run every place. Every morning before breakfast, take off your shirt. The nearest town was 4.5 miles away, and we ran 4.5 miles to the town, 4.5 miles back before breakfast every morning as your opening exercise. And we were in magnificent shape. And we could run all day with a pack, and we were trained in our weapons, and we had all kinds of morale builders, and we felt we were ready.
Other aspects of his paratroop training included simulating a jump with parachutes, as well as packing their own parachutes. The first parachute they packed was the one they used on their first jump. This taught them the importance of precision and responsibility during their training, as well as war engagements. After the completion of his training, Mr. Speranza was enlisted into the 101st Airborne Division, where he was shipped across the Atlantic on the Queen Mary to Holland to meet with the remainder of the division in action.
By this time, I was in the 101st Airborne Division. That was what I was assigned to. And the 101st Airborne Division had been committed. They were in Normandy and Holland, and they were coming out of Holland when I joined. Full-fledged battles where, I have to smile at the people who complain about 5,000 casualties in 10 years of war. We used to use that many in a 120-minute battle. In the Hurtgen Forest, we lost 12,000. What happened was, just generally, Montgomery's plan, if you can picture a map of Europe, was to go up the coast. Right now, Patton is going through France, and he's approaching the Siegfried Line through the center of France, going north. But the British would continue to be bombed with have you heard of the V-2 rockets, the buzz bombs and so on? And those launching platforms were along the coast, along in Holland and Belgium and northern France. And so to relieve the pressure, to try to capture those launching sites so that the V-2 rocket attacks would stop, Montgomery's idea was he was going to go up the coast, drop the paratroopers, now the 1st Allied Airborne Army, 101st, the 82nd, the Polish Brigade, the British Red Devil, the Canadian Command. The plan didn't take into account that there was only one road going up to the north. The paratroops are very lightly armed, you know that. We don't have artillery or tanks in those days. They couldn't. Now they can drop a tank, but we can't back then. The biggest thing we had was mortars. You know, the paratroops could get in there, take the bridges, and hold them until the armor comes out. Montgomery's tank divisions were supposed to come up and then relieve us, so that the Germans reacted very quickly. They cut off the road. The armor could never come up, and we took a beating. The British Red Devil paratroops were wiped out at armament. Handful came up. The Polish Brigade was almost decimated. The 82nd and the 101st, we lost, I don't know what the 82nd casualties were, but they were worse than ours. We were 38%. That's a lot of casualties. You take 38% of 10,000 people and you know what we're talking about. And didn't get it, didn't succeed in doing anything. Of course, you don't see that in history books, that there was a failure, that we got a beating, but we did, and we had to pull up.
After this battle, the 101st Airborne Division was sent to France in November of 1944, where the soldiers were supposed to receive supplies as well as have recreational time to themselves. They were supposed to have sponsored events such as baseball games and some well-deserved rest. However, on December 16th at 4 o'clock in the morning, they were awakened and told they would be shipped to Bastogne to engage Germany in battle.
What was happening was the Germans broke through, and they had advanced all the way to the valley where this little town called Bastogne is, which was a railroad hub. It had 2 railroads and 5 roads leading out to it. Their plan was to break through to Antwerp. We took what we could from the troops that were leaving as we moved in. And the first night, it started to snow.
On the way to Bastogne, the 101st was supposed to be resupplied with coats, guns, and ammunition. However, the troops weren't, causing them to supply themselves once they arrived at location.
Putting grass and straw inside the jacket, you know, the few jackets we had, to try to get some insulation. And one trick that I learned is we had an extra pair of socks. You put the socks in your shirt under here, and all day and all night they'll dry. Meanwhile, your feet are wet all the time, so you take your shoes off, take those socks off, put those in your shirt and take the other ones out. And the ones that did that were okay, but like 35–40% of the people got trench foot.
During the second day of battle, after many failed attempts to overpower the 101st and 82nd Airborne Divisions, Germany decided to bomb Bastogne in order to take control of the town. Despite the fact that they were surrounded and their field hospital was captured, the soldiers held through until reinforcements
Anybody
arrived.
who's been in combat will tell you what a terrible thing it is to hear explosions over and over and over again, all of it. You can say, sooner or later one's going to hit the middle of your head. Christmas Day. And we had beaten anything the Germans threw at us. The sun came out. You could see our shadows, we couldn't believe it. Now there's a dispute about this. Some of them are saying it was the day before, some the day after. What I remember was that it was Christmas Day, the 25th. The sun came out, and the next thing we heard is there was an airplane then called the P-47 Thunderbolt. American Air Force airplane. wonderful airplane, we thought, because 6 of them came out. And they started strafing all around us, strafing all of the German positions. And then they bombed whatever bombs they had all around. And I could see to this day, we're standing up outside the foxhole going, yeah, give it to us.
After reinforcements arrived, Patton broke through, allowing the soldiers to be resupplied.
In May, the Germans surrendered, but we were sent to Bavaria because they said there were some SS units that weren't going to surrender. And we were mad as hell. It was over, we were still being shot at. But there wasn't much to it. They cleaned them out pretty quick.
After Germany surrendered, the 101st was divided and the older gentlemen were sent home, due to the point system used at that time. The point system gave points to soldiers that had fought for a longer period of time, were married, or had a family. Those with the most amount of points were sent home, and the younger, less experienced, were then sent into the 82nd Airborne Division, where they were expected to be sent to Japan.
The 101st was broken up. They said the division is being retired. And they put all of us, the younger ones and the unmarried, into the 82nd. And we were going to be flown from France to Panama to Saipan for the invasion of Japan. That war was expected to last another 2-3 years. The closer the Japanese got pushed to the home islands, the tougher they got. And it was going to take another 500,000 casualties. To another war, which we all were positive, you're not going to survive that one. Hey man, if you were lucky enough to survive this, how many more battles like that are you going to be able to take before you get it? When I got hit, one piece of shrapnel was under my eye here, and they thought touching the brain, just another quarter inch or something, that'd have been a vegetable, but it didn't. They were able to get it out and so on. We were lucky so many times, but you can only be lucky a certain number of times. You're going to get it. And 3 years, 2 or 3 years more of war, we thought. And then they dropped the atomic bomb in August. Whew. War was over, and we had made it. Some of us had. Out of a company of 200, I was in H company. It's over. There was a job to do. We did it. It's finished. I wanted nothing to do with the military anymore. And I didn't join any veterans organization. I said, hey, that's done. I want to find a nice woman now. I want to get married. I want to have kids and get a good job and so on. And so for the next 50, 60 years, 50 years anyway, I didn't keep up with any of that stuff. Okay.
Recently, Mr. Speranza has gone back to Bastogne in Belgium to visit the site of his most memorable battle. He was pleased to find the people of Bastogne to be extremely welcoming and grateful for the sacrifices he and his fellow soldiers made during combat. While in Bastogne, he discovered a brand of beer was available for purchase. The beer was named in honor of himself and his airborne division. This has allowed his visits back to Bastogne to become more frequent and worthwhile.
When, as an 18-year-old kid, before very long, you're a 50-year-old man, let me tell you.
Throughout this experience, we learned and appreciated what occurred during World War II and what our interviewee, Mr. Vincent Speranza, encountered during his deployment. We feel honored for the time he spent with us sharing his memories. The stories he shared gave us an insight into what occurred during the war that we feel is lacking within history books. His stories conveyed how extreme the conditions were for all soldiers fighting in this war, considering the lack of equipment, protection, and shelter offered. It was outstanding for us to hear how young many of the soldiers were during their deployment, many being only a year or two our senior. This allowed us to realize how quickly they had to mature in order to survive the hardships of the war. We were extremely honored to meet such an outstanding man who dedicated part of his childhood in order to secure our freedom, the country's freedom. We would like to thank Mr. Vincent Speranza for taking time to recollect the stories of his war experience. We would also like to thank the soldiers who fought to ensure the freedom we cherish today.